I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside, it's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, "No, no, 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 we're going to do this." And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off road ability, as well as its robust interior, are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
Imagine if you have an idea and you can create that idea real quickly and now you want to sell it. Well, how do you create an online store to sell it? Most people don't know they can do this within a matter of minutes, whether it's an online course, a book, a special report, or even like a t-shirt or something you make. If you go to gumroad.com, this is not an ad, by the way. The creator of Gumroad is coming on the podcast right now, but if you go to gumroad.com, within minutes, you could start selling whatever you want. It's been a long road for Gumroad, a long road of ups and downs. It's a really great entrepreneur story, but it's also a really great story about how the so-called creator economy is being developed. Like, you can create things and now make a living based on what you create, and all the tools are in place thanks to people like Sahil Lavingia, who's the creator of Gumroad, and here he is.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show.
Well, Sahil, thanks for coming on. When I was doing the research for this, I think I found out I'm actually indirectly invested in Gumroad. I didn't even realize that when I asked you on, because I'm in Kamal Ravikant's fund.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
Kamal. He's great. He's awesome.
So let me ask, for anyone who doesn't know, and I'll say this in the intro, Gumroad allows anyone to basically sign up within a matter of minutes to sell stuff online. And this was like a hard problem for a while. It was hard to create a store, even in the OOs, even like just a little more than 10 years ago. It was hard to create your own online store. But Gumroad, you could just sign up, put stuff for sale in a few minutes. And you did that to solve your own problem, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 10 years ago, 11 years ago in 2011, not too long ago, but, Stripe launched, I think, in 2012. Yeah, selling stuff on the internet was hard, and this weird thing started to happen where people would build audiences on the internet. So people would become famous and not have a website. That was like a very new thing. Like you needed a website to be famous on the internet, before that. You had a blog or a newsletter or something. And so that changed. And that's really what led to the idea for Gumroad. Was like, well, what happens when all these people like have audiences, they want to sell stuff to that audience and they don't have websites? Like, nothing exists for that, with that assumption kind of changed. And so, yeah, not too long ago, the internet, the iPhone, I think what came out in 2007, right? So
Yeah.
people forget, like, we lived a life without all these things not too long ago.
Well, but people had been selling stuff on the internet at that point for, 15, 16 years. So what did people do if they wanted to create their own online store? Like, let's say I wanted to sell flowers online. What would I have done?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time you would probably buy a server or sign up for Bluehost or some service that provided you web hosting, and then you would use WordPress or some other software to build a website on that server, and then you would use PayPal typically and embed sort of some PayPal checkout experience into your website, into your WordPress website, right? And so that was like the flow. You needed 3 or 4 different things. You had to glue them together.
And it's not easy. Like if you're not, like all of that sounds easy, but if you're not tech savvy, it's really not that easy.
Yeah, I mean, the hard part is always like figuring out how stuff goes together, right? Like if I broke down how to go to Mars, like into its atomic pieces, like any human would be able to follow those ingredients, right? Those sort of recipe steps. The hard part is figuring out like the order and the magnitude and all of that stuff. Yeah, so just piecing those things together, I think most people freak out. They get fight or flight and they flight, So we try to just make it easier and simple and have everything in one place, so people don't have to think about it too much.
This is another interesting thing. You basically said you took just a weekend to program up the basic Gumroad. And then after that, people were, I guess, able to create stores. People don't realize a lot of times there are still simple ideas to create. It's just nobody's done it.
Yeah.
And it's still, the internet and now with crypto, it's still fertile territory for people to execute on ideas fairly quickly.
Yeah. I had an idea yesterday that I think you could probably build in a weekend.
What's the idea?
Yeah, my mother-in-law was in town and she's helping us set up like our first kind of garden. And basically she left and she's like, just make sure that you water these plants. Like she kind of told me the schedule for watering, right? And I'm like, this should just be an app. Like you should just say carrots this many days, whatever. And then it should just like like Farmville, except in real life, right? I looked it up on the App Store and like there's some app from like, 2007 that sucks or something, like there you could totally make a great app. I would pay $10 a month for this thing.
And it would be like a scheduler, like to tell you when to water your plants?
Yeah, it would basically just be a plant timer, right? A watering timer.
You could use the same thing for like taking pills, for instance.
Yeah, there's so many opportunities, I think. Like you just have to walk around and have kind of an eye for it. Where in the book, I call them like stub your toe moments, basically. But a lot of people stub their toes in life and then move on, right? They don't really consider the fact that like, hey, I could actually make a better version of that experience that I just had. Most people just deal with their bed or their food or their commute or their city or whatever things they deal with in their life. They just assume that they're more constant than maybe they actually are. Or they feel like they don't have the skill set because they don't know how they would piece these things together, right? When I tell people that Gumroad, when I launched it, it took me a weekend. They often say, well, I couldn't do that. That's, you have some set of magic skills that I don't have or something. And I say, well, the code is open source on GitHub. So you can like see all the code, like it's there, right? And then they say, oh, well, I can't do that quickly. And then I say, well, I have this 15-hour video on YouTube where I live stream myself building another website just like Gumroad, like from scratch. And so you could just follow along. And yeah, it might take you 30 hours or 40 hours. But that's about how long a season of Game of Thrones is, right? Like it's doable. People have done it. Many tens of millions of people have done that. And I think there's like, people just think that it's hard, but it's just time consuming, right? For example, like people think that learning how to play piano is very difficult, but my guess is that typing English on a laptop is far harder than playing piano, right? It's just that we do it and we do it kind of instinctively, or per se, it feels instinctive, but it's not. It's a learned skill that everyone kind of had to learn. It's just everyone learns it, so we don't consider it like special, right?
I mean, I think like if you look at some of the apps that I use and that I get super excited about, I bet were programmed like in a day or two. Like Shazam, which is such an obvious idea. Oh, you hear music in a restaurant. Boy, I really love that song. What is it? And someone came along and made the app Shazam, which basically, I guess, listens to the lyrics, identifies the chords, has a database of all the music ever, and identifies the song. Probably wasn't that hard to do that app, is my
Yeah,
guess.
totally. And people think that there's some magic algorithm that's doing that sort of thing, but it's actually not that crazy. Like you have a database of chords that those chords are probably represented in a data set that looks like numbers or letters or some hybrid combination. And then you have some basic algorithm that, takes in your song, turns it into another data structure of numbers and letters, and then just does math and comes up with this song in our database has the least distance between the chords that they sent and the chords that we have. And so it's probably this song, right? And that's all algorithms do. which, by the way, is what humans do, right? Like if you were a human, this is how you would do it. You would go into let's say you had a library of millions of records, right? You would listen to the first one, and you would kind of build an algorithm in your head, and you might sort the music by different, genres or different sort of attributes, and so you could speed up your search to find the right song. And so that's all, like literally all an algorithm does is just say, what would a human do? Right? Like what is artificial intelligence? I mean, it's just what would a human do, right? It's just that we're trying to make that human smarter over time.
Artificial intelligence is basically trying to mimic the behavior of human, not necessarily doing the same thing that a human's doing, but mimicking it. Like when I'm trying to figure out what a song is, I probably don't go through a billion songs in my database in my head to figure it out, but maybe I intuitively go through that. Like the algorithm shortcuts intuition.
Yeah, you do. I mean, the answer is you do. Yeah, exactly. The intuition is an algorithm, right? The better intuition you have, it's just the better of an algorithm that your brain has developed. But effectively, you are accessing those billion songs. That is exactly what your brain is doing. And so, yeah, there's no difference. I mean, there's no difference between the way an AI will eventually figure out how to do these things and the way that I think humans do, is my guess when we figure it out.
Now, I was showing my daughter's Gumroad because like one of my daughters makes t-shirts and I said, "Oh, why you could just sell it online." And she's like, "Oh, I don't know how to make an online store." I'm like, "No, just use this and in 5 seconds you can have an online store." It's so exciting that people can make stuff and then immediately sell it online. And I don't even know if a lot of people even know about Gumroad even though you've been around for 10 years. Like you have 600,000 users, but it's still a small portion of the people who would like to sell things online. Who actually makes the most money using Gumroad?
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly educators of various sorts, people who teach valuable skills, in this kind of economy, people who teach people how to code, how to design, how to paint, how to draw, how to do animation, 3D, assets, resources, tutorials, cooking related things, a lot of financial wealth management stuff.
Like I could see like a financial thing selling, but like a cooking class, will that sell? Like if I made a cooking class, how to make, this kind of food, like a pro, will people buy that? Like what will people buy?
I mean, it depends on who you are, right? I mean, ultimately, if you have an audience willing to pay, right, they will. And so it depends on what you're making. But certainly, there are people who are multimillionaires off of a cookbook, right? It's just so that they had, there was data or there was something in there that they really wanted, or there was something about owning the thing that they really wanted, right? In the case of sort of like a coffee table cookbook or something like that. But I've talked to people who've made $10 million selling cookbooks. Like Nick Kokonis from Alinea, because they have the best restaurant in the world. So people want that cookbook for a variety of reasons, and so I think you can really sell anything. It's just a question of building an audience that really wants that.
What's the sort of thing that has surprised you that it sold well on Gumroad?
I mean, the most surprising thing is just what people are into in terms of their fetishes, right? Like we don't have porn on the service, but we have a lot of like illustrative stuff and use same stuff on Patreon and Substack. And a big percentage of sort of digital content is sort of satisfying to these primal urges. And I've just learned a lot about the things that people are into. And a lot of it has nothing to do with anything graphic, right? It's just like people are into hugging light poles and being stuck under beds and just like weird stuff that people are into.
Wait, I don't understand. What for someone who likes being stuck under beds, what are they selling on Gumroad?
It's just videos of people who are pretending to be stuck under beds, very realistically. They're acting, right? But yeah, they're basically 2-hour videos of people who are like, "I'm stuck under a bed. Help me, help me."
And other people buy that because like they're into that, like it's like a sexual fetish.
I assume that it's a sexual fetish of some sort. Yeah,
What does a 2-hour video go for like that?
$20, $30.
Wow.
I mean, some
That's
of these people
incredible.
they make 6 figures a year selling these sorts of these videos. You don't have to do OnlyFans. There's a lower hanging fruit.
Right.
If you find
How many people do you think make a decent salary, like a livable salary, just using Gumroad?
just using Gumroad. I mean, the thing is, once you're successful on Gumroad, you have an audience. So generally people will diversify, or add on top of. But I would say in the low hundreds of people probably make a full-time living on Gumroad. So probably a couple hundred, 200 to 300 people, maybe more. I'm using US numbers too. Like I went to Thailand and I met a guy who's, making 200 grand a year, but he was living in Chiang Mai selling WordPress templates.
Wow. Okay. And again, like you say, you don't sell porn on the site, but has there ever been a problem where, something you didn't want to be sold was sold on the site? Have you had issues with that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a variety of things that sort of we don't like being sold on the website, right? There are personal preferences, then there's professional preferences, and then there's like legal preferences, right? And so obviously the legal stuff is like, child porn or things like that. Obviously there's a process to deal with that. Then there's like the professional stuff, which is like things that are like Nazi comics, which are technically free speech, but like we may not want to support. And that's where most of the gray area, the deplatforming stuff that people talk about, generally is about those sorts of topics. And then there's personal preferences. Like there's things that I don't like being sold on the platform. Like at one point, this is many years ago, we had someone who was selling blueprints for like how to 3D print a gun. And I just emailed him and I was like, this is just too weird. Like for me, I don't know if I want to be associated. Like I don't want to, end up in some article someday. So he was nice about it. But yeah, generally it's honestly not been an issue. And what's funny is that it was a huge issue when Trump was president. But I think ever since he's kind of no longer on Twitter and no longer president, like people seem to care less about getting rid of that type of content, which is interesting.
Yeah, why do you think that is?
I think it's because people are fighting a war, right? They're trying to win something. In this case, it would be, the president of the United States. And so generally people start to care more about certain kinds of issues that maybe they don't care deeply about that specific issue, but it helps them fight this larger war, right? And so they may not care about climate change or the environment, or they didn't care about the environment, but now climate change gives them an angle at something or another that they may care about. They all of a sudden care a lot more about this issue, or NFTs, or like, the people are looking for ammo, basically, right, in their war. And I think they can find it in cases of someone selling weird content on Gumroad, whether it be people on the right who say, hey, there's like weird people selling like stuff that, look like, I don't know, some weird sexual fetish stuff. We see a lot of that. That was like the core free speech issue of the internet like 20 years ago. It's kind of all coming from that side. And now it's kind of the opposite side, right? Where you have a lot of people who are saying, oh, this stuff is like racist, homophobic, sexist, all those sorts of words. And that might lead to, harm of some sort. And so we need to kind of get that content off the internet. Or that money may be used for bad things, or it's complicated. The decision making is often vague, right? They want the content gone. I think the explanation for why is a little bit fuzzier.
And for someone who wants to sell stuff via Gumroad, and again, you could sell anything. You could sell T-shirts, you could sell a course or whatever, a newsletter. They could sign up for Gumroad. They put their items up. Now they have a store. What are techniques for them to learn how to like market the stuff that they're selling? Like, how do they get people to the Gumroad link?
Yeah, I mean, I think in this environment, I would basically recommend everyone pick a social media platform and start talking, and then probably pick a community and start contributing and do those two things like in sync, right? So for me, for example, when I was getting into the tech industry, I picked Hacker News and Twitter. And so I was like contributing a lot of comments and stuff on Hacker News, and then people would follow me on Twitter, and then I would write blog posts and put them on Hacker News and put them on Twitter. And there was this nice symbiotic thing, and I kind of built my following to like a few thousand people. And once you have a few thousand people, like you have the algorithm and the retweets and all that kind of stuff starts to flywheel. I think a lot of people, they go straight to social media and they're like, no one's listening to me talk. And it's like, yeah, you have 0 followers. Like no one cares about you on social media. You have to go find a group of people who have to listen to you when you're a nobody, right? Like a church, like a real community of people, a physical meetup. I think a lot of people underrate these days moving. We live in this world of remote work and all these great things, and I fully embrace that sort of stuff. But I think when you're beginning your career, when you're trying to maximize your serendipity, like you're, putting your body in a place to maximize those local interactions is probably a pretty big deal, right? Like if you're a musician and you're choosing not to move to LA, that's an active, you should think about that, right? Your chances of being successful as a musician in LA probably go up, and there's some correlation, there's some causation mixed in there. But I think generally I would be skeptical of someone who says they really care and want to be successful and then isn't moving, right? Like what is the statistical chance that you're in the right physical place? Probably pretty low, right? There's a lot of places out there.
So your point is though, also moving to the right social media platform, like and being a part of that community. So and I think people underestimate how powerful it is, but it takes time. Like you can't just
it's a job, Yeah.
I
mean, I think people have to think of it like a job. They have to think of it like a job that you're doing for yourself, maybe for your future self as your boss or something like that. But ultimately, you are putting in 10, 20, 30 hours a week making content, and that doesn't happen. in some passive way. It doesn't happen when like you're going for a walk and inspiration is, trying to wait for inspiration to strike, or going out for, beers with your friends. Like it generally happens like when you're like in a room by yourself, like staring at a screen, uh, churning out stuff, like, producing things out of your head. And that's often a very like painful, stressful, anxiety sort of ridden process. And so I find a lot of people who like struggle to become full-time creators or even go down that path, like they're thinking of it like a hobby. Capitalism is brutal, right? Capitalism is this sport that we all play to like provide value more than other people can provide value. And that's how we make money. And so to think that you can do it as a hobby, it just requires a huge ego, right? Like to be able to make money on the side to a significant scale is hard. If it was easy, more people would do it.
Well, how did you get people first to use Gumroad?
I would cold email people all day, every day, right? Like 40, 60 hours a week. Like I built the product over a weekend, right? That's the easy part. And then I had to sell the thing. And so I would basically just spend every day going on Twitter, going on Instagram, going on Reddit, just like going on the internet, finding people selling digital products online, who've done the old process of hooking up a website and WordPress and PayPal and emailing them, right? Finding their email or contact form and saying, hey, and I would never copy paste. I would just write an email. I'd say, hey, I created this thing called Gumroad. I saw that you're selling this like cookbook recipes. You probably, I assume, email everyone manually. I built this little thing that like automates it. It, costs like 5%. It's about roughly the same price as PayPal. And, I want to build some stuff later. So it'll do more things over time in this vein, right? And so you just do that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And like your conversion rate is probably between 1% and 5% of people who will actually try the thing. And then, make some money. And then you do that for, probably 4 or 5 years until you really have like real organic momentum. I think it takes a long time for people, if you think about what people do with Gumroad, like they're betting their business, they're betting their income on Gumroad, right? And there's a lot of options out there. And so it's not, the chance of someone like organically, saying, hey, I have a problem. This problem costs me a lot of money or would make me a lot of money if I figured it out. I'm going to go Google the answer, find Gumroad and use it and make money. Like that's just crazy pipeline, right? To your point, like we have a ton of users. We're pretty successful. Most people don't know who we are. It's really hard to do that. And so I think sales is often like, you got to build something to sell, and then you have to sell the thing. And then once you have sales, then I think marketing is a lot easier, right? Because then your marketing is mostly check out our customers, right? Check out how successful our customers are. It's a lot harder to kind of market something that doesn't yet exist, in my opinion.
Oh my gosh, I love these clothes. Mizzen and Main. That's Mizzen and Main. It really is the most comfortable work clothes. Travel clothes. I had to travel this whole week. I'm traveling for a week and a half, and I just took Mizzen and Main clothes with me. Close out 2023 in style with comfortable, breathable, packable, and machine washable pieces from Mizzen and Main. As you wrap up your year-end goals, enjoy a Mizzen and Main dress shirt that you can wear confidently. I like that they've very, very just nice, solid colors. I don't really like to get all fancy in patterns and everything, although they do have some pattern shirts, but very comfortable clothes, stretchable pants. It's just super comfortable, but they look professional, and you can wear them casually or professionally. I like some of their flannel shirts or untuck shirts. I love untuck. I never tuck in. So again, whether you're shopping for a special someone or giving yourself the gift you really want, I just buy myself gifts. Mizzen and Main is the perfect gift for any guy who works, travels, and or cares about looking and feeling great. As you could tell by my many photos across the internet, I care about looking fantastic. I'm practically a model. And let's be honest, every guy loves to look great. So again, shop now at mizzenandmain.com and save 20% when you spend $130 or more using promo code James. That's promo code James at Mizzen and Main, Mizzen and Main.com. You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players, and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. You were the number 2 employee at Pinterest, right? So this must have given you a lot of, as Pinterest grew, you probably saw how that network grew and you probably applied a lot of those principles to Gumroad. But what's the story there? Like, how did you get to be the number 2 employee at Pinterest? How long did you stay? Like, what'd you do there?
Yeah, so I joined Pinterest in 2010. I was employee number 2. I was, I believe, 18.
You were 18 years old?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was a freshman at US. So I grew up in Singapore, to sort of Indian parents, and then I went to the US for college. Went to USC, and then started doing contract freelance work for like startups that I found on Hacker News and things. I realized when I went to USC, there's a sort of a freshman computer science class of about 300 people, and only one other person knew what Hacker News was. And so very quickly I realized, like, holy crap, like if I want to get into startups, like USC is not the right place to be. And so I started doing contract work for YC startups. I went to startup school. I met with a bunch of YC founders. I could design and code and build my own stuff. I had a bunch of apps in the app store. And so I could effectively do the job, right? There's like full proof that I can do whatever job they give me without them having to even talk to me.
What apps did you have in the App Store?
Yeah, I had a few. I mean, I had an app called Taxi Law, which was like an app for Singaporeans to call cabs on their phone. I shipped that before Uber. And then I built Color Stream, which is like a color palette mixer thing on your iPhone. I built a thing called Data, which was like allowed you to catalog like numerical data points in your life. So, how many glasses of water you drank or steps a day or whatever back in the day. So just like random mini things to solve my own problem. If you want to spend 20, 30 hours a week, like imagine a content creator spending 20, 30 hours a week on, making TikTok videos. Like you could make an app a week, right? Like there's a lot of stuff you can build. And so I built probably 20, 30 things. Many things didn't work, a few did, but that gave me the confidence and the ability. You need both.
Was anything generating good money? Like anything generating a stream you could live on?
Oh yeah, I was financially independent, like by 16 or 17 years old. I mean, nothing crazy, but like probably making like $3,000 or $4,000 a month off the iPhone app sales and other freelance I was doing on the side, doing web design and stuff. So yeah, and then Pinterest actually emailed me. They saw one of my apps on the front page of Hacker News. Ben, formerly now the CEO of Pinterest, sent me an email saying, "Hey, we're working on this thing. We don't have an iPhone app. We need one." Like every startup needed one at the time. And you seem like you can make apps. Like, would you be interested? So I sort of started doing freelance for them, and that sort of turned into full-time job offers from them and some other startups. And I picked Pinterest and joined them employee number 2 in January of 2011. And then I was there for not too long, about 8 months or 9 months. And I built Pinterest for iPhone, and I also made it red. Those are 2 of the things that I did there.
Why would people use Pinterest instead of Instagram? I never really kind of figured out Pinterest.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is that it's not social, right? So it's not a social network. I think a lot of people think that it's like Instagram or Twitter or something like that. It's not about following your friends. It's really about following boards, following topics and interests. And so it's really great for people who are like very like functionally looking for something, right? So if you're planning a wedding, or if you're decorating a house, or if you're you need recipe organization, or if you're a digital artist and you're working on some, the next Marvel movie and you need a mood board, right? Like it's a very functional product. It solves a real problem for a lot of people. 92% of which I believe are women, in terms of who uses Pinterest. So it definitely has a sort of gender bias, which is interesting.
And did you, if you don't mind me asking, did you make money from Pinterest?
I mean, I made my salary, but I did not vest any of the equity. So when I left, I owned I was entitled to 0.75% of Pinterest, but I didn't vest any of it because I left before my cliff. I was a little stupid and immature. And
But at the same time, you started Gumroad, so that, Gumroad, you have equity, and obviously it's your company.
yeah,
So,
yeah, my Gumroad, I don't know what the math is now that they both have a kind of like relatively public valuations of what the math actually would be. But I think my Gumroad equity would be worth more.
with Gumroad, you wrote a book about the minimalist entrepreneur. There was one point where you had employees in the office, right? But you
Yeah.
you were going through, I think it was in 2013, you were going through some stuff. You had to lay off some employees. What was going on then?
Yeah, so it's 2015. So we raised our Series A from Kleiner. We raised $7 million, and it was really just me at the time. And so we had like 3 years of runway before we really had to kind of go knocking on the VC doors again. And so when we did that, basically the resounding feedback was like, you're not growing fast enough to raise more money. And so we did a bridge with Kleiner. It was a $2 million bridge at a 4x pref, which basically, for listeners who don't know, that mean that we'd have to pay back $4 for every dollar invested, which basically would,
It's hard.
took the company underwater for a while. Yeah, it was hard.
Yeah.
And basically, kind of de facto killed the company. But we spent 9-12 months trying to make it work, trying to get to profitability, effectively try to prove the metrics out to VCs, whatnot, and weren't able to. And one lesson I have from those days is like, if you weren't able to figure it out in 3 years, like an extra 9 months is unlikely to be the secret, weapon that you needed. The Hail Mary pass often doesn't work, doesn't go viral either, though. Anyway, I had to do a round of layoffs. So we went from 20 people down to 5, and then 5 just down to me over the course of like 6 months or so. And then I ran the business basically by myself for like a year and a half or so, 2 years maybe, from like 2015, 16 to 2017, 18.
And so what were some of the metrics then? Like, so this is just you. How many users were there? Like, what were the revenues?
Yeah, we were doing about $2.5, I believe, $1 million a month in volume, right? And we were taking about 5% of that or so. And so we were making, a couple hundred, like $100K or so a month, right? In top line, maybe a little bit more than that. But we were burning like $400K on people, right? And so we basically had to take that $400K down to as close to zero as possible. Because that
was that your main cost was people. I guess that would be, there were server costs, but
yeah, I mean, everything else scales basically with revenue, right? Because everything else is going to basically get more expensive as you need more servers for more activity. They're effectively all energy based, right? And so anything to do with people, it's really just people, right? There's maybe $50 a month for Notion or $20 a month for Figma or whatever. But generally the vast majority of our OpEx, like for example, I can tell you now, our OpEx is about 275,000 or something like that. And probably like 255,000 of that are, people, right? Like a huge percent. And that's kind of why layoffs suck, is because everyone kind of knows like what happens in a layoff, right? Is like the number one cost structure of a business that is not contributing to revenue. Got to go. And that's R&D. That's basically all of the creative people. But I like to think of it like the people who always do well are the people who are always necessary, right? And so the support people are going to be just as needed pre and post, whereas the engineers actually go from super valuable to not valuable at all, which I think is kind of an interesting kind of pro and con of being one versus the other.
And so you laid off all these people. You're kind of like treading water. The site was growing, I assume. And when did you know, okay, it was time to rehire?
Yeah, well, basically what happened was about 2 years later, Kleiner sends me an email. Actually, I sent them an email initially saying, hey, this Gumroad is just an update. This is what's happening. I'm running the business. It's like break even, like it'll keep doing its thing. We have, the bridge and all this money that we raised before that, right? So we have $16 million in preferences that we have to pay off eventually for me to and anyone else to see $1. And then, on top of that, grow beyond that. And, the business was doing $1 million, $2 million a year, right? So not really close to that. And they said, we're not interested. And then 6 months later, randomly, they reply back and say, hey, we actually are interested. We'd love to write off the whole investment that we made for $1. Effectively, you can buy back our position on the bridge and the A for $1.
Oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
16 million in preferences you could buy back for $1?
Yeah, I mean, they weren't all of it, but they were like 14 of it. Yeah. So they basically they wrote it off. And I don't know why exactly, if they're writing, cleaning up their books or whatever, but I wasn't one to complain. They did an amazing thing. And they actually, without that, I think Gumroad, who knows, right? Like I would still just be, treading water today, who knows? But like,
because just so people understand, like you would have had to sell the I don't know what the valuation was that Kleiner did their.
yeah, the
their
A was
bridge.
28 million. And so the bridge around 28 million too. Yeah.
So you would have had to sell for over $100 million for you, because of the 4 times preference, for you to even see $1 from this company.
Yeah, basically, there was no site. I mean, there was no real with the preferences. There was no real site. Yeah, no way.
No, what do you mean no site? There was no
site. Yeah, like no line of sight to an exit that would have paid off the preferences, the 4x, and returned any real, made me.
And you're servicing like 100,000 customers or so. Like, so you didn't want to shut the thing down?
Yeah,
obviously.
exactly.
Was this depressing?
Yeah, some people would use that word, I mean, I think it was weird because I felt like I didn't know what to do, right? I was like, and it was hard to, like, I wasn't complaining, right? I was like, sort of like, I was able to run this business. It was able, I didn't have to be in a specific place at a certain time, so I could travel and kind of take a break from life. And I was working, for 5 years pretty hard before that. And so I kind of traveled a bit and I just, but it was definitely like, I couldn't do anything else, right? That was like difficult. And so I probably would have shut the business down or sold it for like, a few $1 million or something at some point. Without that happening.
Were you getting offers, but they couldn't work it out because
actually, I mean, we talked to, Stripe and, Kickstarter made an offer and they were low, right? I was not saying that like they were amazing offers or anything, but they were like in the low millions, I believe. But it just was like, Kleiner's going to want this, and it's just not. It wasn't really worth the conversation. And so, really, like what changed everything was when Kleiner wrote it off, and then all of a sudden, our preference stack went from 16, including the 4x, down to 2, and then 2. When we were doing $1 million or $2 million in revenue, maybe like 300-400K in profit or something like that at that time. All of a sudden, it's like, oh yeah, I could turn this into a 3 or 4 million revenue business, sell it, in 3 or 4 years, and then eventually make, $4 or $5 million or whatever, and then do my next thing. And like, I at least saw an outcome. Like it wasn't like some amazing outcome, but it at least gave me a sense of like, oh, this is a target, a light at the end of the tunnel that I can move toward. And it's happening, right? Like the cool thing about this whole story is that I didn't actually change anything, right? Like, I think that's one of the interesting things about this story and why I think it resonated with a lot of people is because it's kind of like an emotional roller coaster, right? In terms of like, you're on paper, like, I was like, 17 in high school in Singapore. And then I had a, $8 million Series A and C from Kleiner Perkins as solo founder, super young. And then I like burned it all and like almost failed. And then I like, had a great business, and then COVID happened. So now it's kind of up again, and who knows what's going to happen next. Right. But ultimately, like, if you're an alien looking at this story, it's just like, I was staring in front of my, I was like at my laptop, like just, like doing this. Right. And like, which I kind of like a lot. Like, I think it kind of, I don't know, I like to think that it keeps me humble in the sense that like a lot of the games that we get up to in the tech industry are made up. They're games, right? People are rich on paper and then they're poor on paper, and everyone gets super happy and super sad. And it's kind of nice to know, like, actually that's all kind of made up. Like, did I go for a walk this morning is like the number one correlation with like how happy I am, right? And everything else is kind of secondary to that.
This is such a valuable service for all business owners, big businesses, small businesses, doesn't matter. I wish I had this in the many different businesses that I've started. Sometimes it seems like your business is humming, but then suddenly you don't understand it. You're starting to fall behind. You're not understanding where your costs are, where your revenues are, where your payments are. Teams are buried in all sorts of like BS work, and you can't seem to close the books. So you need like one dashboard, one source of truth. I'm jealous of this business, NetSuite from Oracle, of course, NetSuite by Oracle. I wish I'd come up with this idea. It's a brilliant concept to have all your business intelligence on one dashboard. This is why you need to know these three numbers: 37,000, 25, and 1. So 37,000, that's the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the number one cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. 25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down costs. 1, because your business is one of a kind. So you get a customized solution for all of your key performance indicators, your KPIs, in one efficient system with one source of truth. Manage risk, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins. Everything you need to grow all in one place. So right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist designed to give you consistently excellent performance absolutely free at netsuite.com/James. That's netsuite.com/James to get your own KPI checklist. netsuite.com/James. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like, the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list, because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin, or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get 2 memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply. So 2017, you start generating a profit.
Yeah.
You got rid of all these preferences. You did crowdfunding where you raised $5 million in a day. I don't know what valuation that was. And then I guess, have you raised money since then?
Yeah, just that, and a little bit on top of that. We ended up raising about 7 or 8 at like 100 pre.
100 pre. So now you're going for it. Like, you want a big outcome.
I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, we're at 12 million in revenue So I think, a 10x multiple is like a pretty great business, or it's a healthy business. I think it's worth roughly about 100 million or so, given the market right now. And we'll see what happens. I mean, for me, I'm going to keep running this thing. I have fun doing it. I'm experimenting with the model, with the way that we work, and, crowdfunding. And at some point I would like to issue dividends to, shareholders. That's when I will consider my sort of the Gumroad journey done. Like, I think until there are dividends to investors, like, I sort of want to get there now. Like, that's my light at the end of the tunnel that I'm excited about. And I think there's a huge opportunity to kind of figure that out, because I think right now the path is, yeah, go IPO, right? But like, we're doing 12 million in revenue. Like, are we going to IPO? Is that possible? Can we? We can. We can go talk to NASDAQ and spend $250,000 a year being a public company. But is there a way to do, to do dividends privately with the 7,000 to 8,000 investors that we have? Can we raise more money privately and just add them into this cycle? And so I think there's a lot of experimentation that we'll do. But
Could you offer
I'll keep running.
more services? I mean, could you, I mean, is there ways to grow bigger by, I mean, right, you have the kind of core service, which is still have allow people to create an online store within seconds. I forget, do you have newsletter subscriptions like Substack?
We do have newsletters, which we shipped a couple years ago, which are doing good. But yeah, basically there's two efforts that we're making. It's less about growth and more about like, I want to just do more stuff, get bored pretty easily. And so we're building a website builder. And so we're going to build a free website builder, kind of like Notion. So Gumroad is going to kind of broaden from just like being a sort of sales page builder to like a whole website builder. And so that's kind of an angle that we'll see if we can compete with like the, Wix and those sorts of folks, Squarespace, et cetera. And then we're also building a completely new product. So that new product is called Flexile, FLEXILE.com. Basically means flexible. But that's like basically a way to take the way that we work and how we do contractor invoicing, onboarding, payments, tax compliance. We have a company that's like 40 contractors and no employees. And so we basically built a service that kind of does that sort of gusto for really contractors. Neat. And so we'll see. I'm excited about like using the base that we have with Gumroad. Like, Gumroad will probably always be profitable. It'll always sustain a team of 20, 30, 40, 50 amazing engineers and designers and support people. And if Gumroad doesn't keep growing like this, or if it does, but it doesn't actually require a ton of maintenance, which is the beauty of software, then like I can go build new products. And so I think we're going to try this one out, see how it does. We're kind of doing the same thing. We're solving our own problem. We already use it internally, and we'll kind of try to sell it by the end of the year, see how people resonate with it. We might keep that under Gumroad. We might spin it out and raise crowdfunding. Who knows, like the direction we take with it. But yeah, I try not to think too far in advance, because I find that like I tried that in 2019 and then COVID happened, and planning is tough.
No one in like 2016, when asked like, where do you see yourself in 5 years, said, well, I'm going to be locked in my room all day wearing a mask and trying to enjoy life that way. No one said that. So it's hard to predict things. But how did you like, even though you built the site in a weekend, how did you deal with relatively complicated issues like, different sales taxes in every state, different sales taxes in every country, potential for fraud and chargebacks? Like, how did you deal with like these kind of like chargeback? Like let's say somebody bought a ton of an item, and then suddenly that retailer who's on your platform gets all these chargebacks. You don't know where there's fraud, and the credit card companies get upset. Like, how did you deal with all this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of just deal with it as it happens. There's this, I think of it like, building a car, where there's a great book about sort of, I think Hyundai or something. And basically the way you build a car is you build one car and then you figure out how to build two cars, and you kind of just build the factory as you need it, there's no like school you can go to for like how to build a car factory, right? Tesla did their own stuff and had to figure out their own way. And so I kind of think of it like that, where you just have to start, and like things like chargebacks, things like disputes, things like sales tax. Even today, or now we have to deal with these problems where like the EU will say, hey, all of a sudden, if you're making this, selling this product in this place, and, you have to deal with this. And then there's like Russian sanctions because of the war. And like, it's just a constant, and it's getting worse, right? It's not like every country is getting easier to deal with. Every country is getting more and more sort of, their burden is increasing. And so it's just kind of, you start the company, you commit to it. You have like a Slack log of every transaction that happens, and you have a lot of anxiety for a few years as you just hope that you are smarter than the fraudsters, right? Because basically fraud is just cat and mouse, right? You just have to be smarter than the enemy. And luckily you're on defense, so you have a little bit more maybe home court advantage in terms of like you know what data you're using. They don't know what data you're using. But it's just, yeah, it's kind of scary, to be honest. I mean, like you hire fast and well, and you hope that you are able to brace any, but you will get hit. I mean, I remember when I won't name the company, but I was talking to another creator economy company, and I don't think they hired as well as we had. And so they were struggling with, they were doing like probably the same scale, about 2.5 million in volume. And they were doing about, I think they were losing about $50,000 to $150,000 a month in just fraud.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's like, if you're not venture backed, you're going to die, right? I mean, that's like $50,000 a month is a huge amount of money that fraudsters were taking or out of your bottom line. But every business, again, has to deal with this, right? You start a grocery store, about 3 to 4% of your margin goes just to shoplifting, basically, and theft, et cetera. So, this is a problem. Anytime you sell stuff or help people sell stuff, like, people will try to manipulate that to make money, right? It's kind of like part of capitalism, I think.
I would think that, you've been doing this for almost 10 years or over 10 years, and, you raise money at $100 million pre. I would think at some point I would want to move on. Like, why didn't you just sell the company for like 25 million, say? Because again, your preferences you got rid of them. You probably were getting offers. You were doing decently. Why didn't you just cash out? Yeah, you had most of the equity.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't know what I would do with like 10, $20 million in my bank account. Like, I just don't like money. I think money scares me. And so I try to deploy that capital like as soon as I get it. Every time a startup investment returns like 100 grand or more, I just reinvest it right back into startups. And so I just don't like to have any, I like to live in my head. Like, I like to like have nothing that I own. And so, Gumroad, like if I sold Gumroad, then I would need to start a new company. Like I would need to fill the time somehow, and I'd start Flexile, right? So now I can have my cake and eat it too, where I can keep running Gumroad. Gumroad's going to grow hopefully 10+% a month, or sorry, a year. And that's better than basically any market could perform for me, right? And so effectively I have like 80, 90% of my net worth in a single asset, but it's growing 10, 20%. I can control it. I can hire engineers that can create value. That's far better than any other investment that I feel like I could make. And so, yeah, I just find that.
Do you feel Gumroad services could become a commodity? Like essentially, let's say Google makes an extension where you just have to fill out a few things, upload some pictures, and you could start selling in a few seconds.
I mean, I think it's possible, right? I mean, I do think, let's say we're doing about 200 million in GMV a year. We're making about $12 million in revenue off that. Let's say we're making 3 or 4 million in profit if we wanted to, probably about that much off that, right? So that's 3 or 4 million cash flow, right? So you can value the business purely based on that. That could certainly go down, right? It could also go up, I think, in equal measure. And I think the beauty of hiring engineers and designers is you can always react. You can always build new things. So I think it's much more likely that, for example, Flexile gets to 10 million or 12 million in revenue, and now we're at 24 million total, then like we zero out. But even in like a death case scenario, right? If you model out, okay, let's say like Stripe launches Gumroad, right? Like a perfect Gumroad clone at Stripe, everyone loves it. There's enough volume on Gumroad that I really believe we could like probably sustain on, we might get cut in half or something, right? In an extreme case, but then that's still 100 million a year. That's still 6 million in revenue. That's still enough to do whatever I want with, right? And so I don't know. I just feel like what I value is I value my time and happiness. And Gumroad allows me to do whatever the hell I want with my time and my location. I'm not accountable to anybody. I do public board meetings, and I'm open and transparent. So I hope that people give me feedback so I can improve as a CEO and I believe I have a sort of fiduciary responsibility to this $100 million valuation. I want to grow that to 200, 250. I would love for Gumroad to be a public company worth $1 billion, but I'm in no rush, right? Like if this takes 10 years from now, I'm okay with that. I think most startups die by suicide, right? Most startups die because the founders run out of energy. And if you look at the $1 trillion companies, they took 20, 30, 40 years to get to where they are today. Apple is not a young company. Amazon is not a young company. Google is not a young company.
What makes you happy outside of Gumroad? What are the things you do that make you happy?
Walking in the sun, talking to friends and family, playing with my cats, reading books, thinking about books.
You invest though, like you're an investor. I noticed in Clubhouse, for instance. So you actively invest. What's going on with Clubhouse? They like shot up to seemed like it was going to be the next $1 billion huge social media, and then now nobody talks about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Clubhouse sort of had their Foursquare moment, except instead of South by Southwest, they had like a year or more of COVID, right? Where they just had the perfect environment for them to succeed. Uh, and now people learn that they like hanging out with people in person more than they like talking to people on the phone. And so we'll see what they end up doing over the long term. I still believe in them strongly because they have such an amazing product and such an amazing team. And I love Paul and Rohan. But yeah, they definitely kind of, hit their phenotypical sort of genetic potential very early, and now are now kind of going to spend years trying to get back to that. But if they succeed,
And
they'll be a multi-billion-dollar company again.
what do you look for in a private investment? Like Clubhouse was
Uh,
very speculative, for instance. Like nobody knew for sure whether an audio based social network would succeed. It was like an interesting idea. So it's more speculative than the average angel investment, I would say.
yeah, I mean, I invest mostly for like to mitigate my psychological FOMO, right? So like imagine 10, 20, 30 years from now, I'm 40, 50, 60 years old, and I look back and say, oh, wow, I could have been part of this journey to lead, that created the next Facebook, the Amazon, Google, and I wasn't able to learn as much as I would have been able to and make friends and with these kinds of people. And so it's really just a FOMO mitigation technique. So when I talk to somebody, my angel investment is purely like, does this have a chance at being generational? And that is mostly a person decision because it's like is this personal generational, right? Like, does this person have that quality? And luckily, I was employee number 2 at Pinterest, so I saw it in Ben. I was one of the first users of Stripe, so I saw it in John. I've seen a few examples of this, and so I've seen people go from people who didn't, weren't super well known to people who are running multi-billion-dollar companies, and so that's kind of what I look for, right? Is like, do you fit? Could I imagine you in a lineup with these people in certain attributes, right? And the hard part is knowing which attributes do you want to pattern match against, right? And that kind of gets into this whole conversation around diversity, equity, inclusion, and bias, and all these sorts of things. But ultimately, you are pattern matching, right? I just believe that I have a better algorithm because I have better data because I've been there, done that, a little bit more than I think some of my peers have.
Also, you see a lot of entrepreneurs because of Gumroad, because Gumroad allows entrepreneurs to
Yeah.
sell their goods. Like,
Yeah.
have any of those entrepreneurs gone on to like, huge success out of the
Yeah.
I mean, you have 600,000 users right now.
Yeah, totally. I mean, some of them profoundly successful. Like for example, Lambda School or the Bloom Institute of Technology. Austin Allred had sold a book on Gumroad before. There's a guy, Kyle Webster, who he's responsible for all the brushes in Photoshop. He started out selling brushes, Photoshop brush pack on Gumroad, and now he works for Adobe. So there's a lot of Nathan Barry from ConvertKit. He started off selling ebooks. I mean, he was doing stuff before that, freelance and stuff, but he sold a book on Gumroad. One of our first kind of success stories. Now he has ConvertKit, which I don't know, they're like 26, 30 something million ARR. So there's a lot of those examples. People who, I assume that the vast majority of people, I have no idea. Like every once in a while I meet up with a founder who's like, oh yeah, like I sold an ebook or I did this, or, just like when I started like as a kid in Singapore, I wanted to make some money on the internet. So I wanted to sell something. And what I had was my time. And so I learned a skill, which was web design. So I could make, some money on the internet. So I could buy Xbox games, and so that's really like Gumroad. Like, and maybe that's why I still run Gumroad today. I could sell it. Someone else could do it. I could make some money, but like I get to control that experience for like maybe more people. Right. And maybe I believe I can do that better than others may be able to.
Well, you certainly had a unique path, and it's a great company that hundreds of thousands of people use to sell their stuff. And like I said, I think the opportunity is still there because many people still don't know how to sell their things online. They don't know Gumroad exists.
Yeah, it's still early days.
Yeah, it's still early days, really, where people are still selling their t-shirts at the beach instead of going online and creating an online store in a few minutes. So, Sahil, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Is there any social media that you want people to follow you on?
Yeah, the best one is my Twitter, which is at SHL.
SHL.
Yeah.
How'd you get a 3-letter Twitter handle?
A former Gumroad employee of mine used to work at Twitter, so he was able to help out with that.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Sahil. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
At Discount Tire, we know how valuable your time is around the holidays. Get 30% shorter average wait time when you buy and book online at discounttire.com, so you can spend more time with friends and family this holiday season. Discount Tire, let's get you taken care of.
Whether in person or remote, open communication with your doctor is key to managing any condition, including heart failure.
How have you been feeling? I'm okay.
Both are great options to continue having open conversations with your doctor about how you're feeling.
I've had less energy.
And when you speak openly with your doctor, they're better equipped to help. Visit heartfailuretalks.com to learn more.